Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second episode on the disciplines of retreat. Remember, in this series, we've been talking about self-denial and self-control. And with the disciplines of retreat, we're primarily focusing on spiritual disciplines that we use to refrain from certain normal social activities for a short period of time for a spiritual purpose.
Last time we talked through some of the basic ideas of retreat, and we told you that we're going to be focusing on 4 specific disciplines that fall in this category: silence, solitude, Sabbath, and frugality.
The 4 S's.
The four
S's. That's
frugality.
easy to remember.
Yep.
In this episode, we want to unpack those first two, silence and solitude. We want to help you walk through what these disciplines are and why they're good for us. And we want to give you some tips on how to start practicing them today.
So let's take silence first. What do we mean by silence? Well, for us, silence has to do with simply shutting your mouth.
Okay.
Choosing not to talk. Choosing to keep your mouth closed in situations where you would normally just be talking away.
The way we like to say it is that when we practice the discipline of silence, we choose to refrain from normal conversation for a short period of time for a spiritual purpose. Do you hear that?
We're going to say that over and over
again.
again.
It's good. And like we've said before with other disciplines, every part of what we're saying here matters.
So let's start with the spiritual purpose of silence. All of the spiritual disciplines are training us away from something sinful towards something godly, and silence is doing the same thing. Silence is targeting sinful things that tend to show up when we talk. Silence is training us to be silent in situations when talking would be sinful.
So what situations can you think of when you should really be quiet?
For me, I find that my pride and arrogance really tend to show up when I start talking.
So all the time.
There are times when I want people to know that I'm the smartest guy in the room. So I start talking to demonstrate to everyone listening that I've got all the right answers.
Oh, man. For other folks, gossip is one of the natural things that they fall into whenever they're in a conversation.
For other folks, they tend to dominate conversations. They fail to love the people around them because they're always talking. They never give anyone else the chance to say anything.
Gosh.
Does that resonate?
Yes. You're attacking me.
I'm not attacking you.
There are all kinds of sins that show up when we start talking. And the Bible actually has a ton of things to say about this, especially throughout the book of Proverbs.
And we know this is kind of crazy, but we're just going to read you 7 different verses in Proverbs that just hammer this point home. We want you to really feel how important this is for God's people.
Proverbs 10:19, when words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent.
Proverbs 17:27, whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding.
Proverbs 17:28, even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent.
That's one of my favorite
Yeah.
ones. I like that one. Proverbs 18:2. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his own opinion.
That's like the life verse of Twitter. I think.
Yeah.
Proverbs 21:23, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble.
Proverbs 29:11. A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back.
Proverbs 29:20, do you see a man who is hasty in his words? There is more hope for a fool than for him.
Okay, do you get the point yet? Keeping control of your words is wise and life-giving. Letting your mouth have free rein is foolish and destructive.
The discipline of silence is meant to train us away from sinful talking, and it trains us toward godly talking and godly listening. Remember, silence is a discipline of self-denial that builds self-control. We use a time of silence to teach ourselves to control when we speak and when we keep quiet.
So how do we do this? Well, first, remember that what we're talking about here is choosing to refrain from normal conversation for a short period of time. So, what we recommend is that you choose a day or even a time of day and then put rules on your talking for that period of time.
Yeah. So one thing that I have done in the past is I will typically pick an entire day where I say I am not going to speak about any of the stuff I want to speak about today. And this is so hard for me. This is outrageously hard. But I don't I don't keep myself from saying anything because I think when I'm with my children, if they're trying to talk to me and I would say nothing, that just is unloving.
That would be weird.
If I am at work at the office and somebody says, "Hey, Mark, did you see that email? What are your thoughts?" and I look at them and don't reply, that's just that doesn't work. So instead, what I do is I allow myself to greet people, right? The standard like, "Hey, how are you?" You know, that kind of stuff. I allow myself to reply to answer questions that people ask me. And then I allow myself to ask questions about how the people around me are doing. So I can say, "How are you? You look kind of down. Is everything all right?" I can say that. But I can't say, "Hey, I heard an interesting thing today." Nope. Today I'm not talking about me, the things on my mind, or any of the stuff I want to talk
That's
about.
so good. Really, really interesting. I've also practiced silence. That didn't really impact my whole day. It was more just a part of my day, but it was helpful. So I started thinking that I wanted to fight against sinfully expressing my opinion. So I tried to think about a situation when I tend to do that so that I could practice silence in those moments. And it just hit me one day that when I'm driving, I'm yelling my opinions all the time. Because I'm yelling at other drivers who I think are doing stupid things on the road. So I decided that when I practice silence, I'm going to just not say anything in the car while I'm driving. I'm just by myself driving to work. I'm not saying anything. Even when someone cuts me off in traffic, don't say anything. Keep my mouth shut. Or when it seems like they've just never seen a stop sign before in their entire life and they don't know how to use it, I'm going to practice silence.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to talk while I'm in my car.
And notice how Paul is trying to deal with his own kind of maybe anger and expressing all of his opinions, which are better than everyone, you know. And so he's targeting it one way.
Right.
And I'm trying to deal with the fact that I monopolize the conversation. I'm such an extrovert and a talker, and that leads me to not to tell my stories instead of asking how someone else is doing. I'm not thinking about them. I just want another person to hear my thoughts today. And so we're targeting different things, and it shows up differently.
And those things, some of those things might sound kind of silly, but practicing silence, training yourself to be quiet when you want to talk, that trains you in self-denial. It teaches you how to get control of your words.
Yeah. All right, so let's put silence on pause for a minute. We'll be silent about silence, and let's switch to talking about the discipline of solitude.
So solitude is exactly what it sounds like. It's the discipline of refraining from normal social contact for a short period of time for a spiritual purpose. And I think for our society, this is one of the scariest disciplines that God has given us for our good.
We live in a world where we are connected all day, every day. Even outside of our real life face-to-face interactions, we have social media and email and YouTube and Google and the nonstop news cycle, FaceTime, Zoom, all of the other ways we can plug into the world around us. And the access point to all of that fits in our pockets
This big,
with us all the
right?
time.
Yeah. Our lives are completely saturated with social contact. We can have contact with the rest of humanity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We never have to be alone with our own thoughts. We never have to be alone with what's going on in our hearts.
And we never have to be alone with God. And really, what all of that means is that all of that social contact can actually become noise in our relationships with Jesus.
Yeah.
All of that social contact can distract us away from having meaningful contact with God.
The discipline of solitude is meant to teach us how to cut through all of the noise and distraction and to focus on meeting with God, one-on-one. just us and our Creator King. And this is actually something that Jesus seems to have done a lot.
Yeah, we read a story in the first chapter of Mark's Gospel of how Jesus had worked this crazy long day healing people and teaching people and casting out demons, and he didn't finish until after dark. But then Mark says this in Mark 1:35, and rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed.
Jesus was practicing the discipline of solitude here. And he does this over and over again throughout his ministry. Jesus understood that unplugging from the world and just being with the Father is what feeds the soul.
So what could this look like for us? Again, it's a matter of picking a day and picking a time and then setting some rules for your social contact. And we're talking about your real physical social contact and your digital social contact.
Right. The goal here is to train ourselves to say no to depending on the world around us for validation or sustenance, and instead to say yes to God for those things.
So maybe you choose 2 days a month where you intentionally say no to social media. You willingly cut yourself off from that form of social contact for a couple days, a month, to train yourself away from depending on that.
Or maybe you choose a couple days a year where it's just you alone with God. Maybe you take a spiritual retreat once a year to just be with God away from the noise and distractions of the world.
Does any of what we've talked about today sound like it would be good for your soul? Would training yourself to watch your mouth be good for you? Would training yourself to say no to some forms of social contact for a while be good for you?
How do you think you might start implementing some of these practices? Is there a day and a time when you think you could practice silence or solitude? What sins do you struggle with that you think silence and solitude might help you fight against?
Church, God has given us these disciplines for our good. They're to help us fight against sin. They're there to train us toward godliness. So really think about how you can use them to grow in Christ.
And as always, if you have questions about what any of this might look like for you, please let us know. We want to help you.
Yeah. That's all we've got for you today. We'll see you next time.
Bye.